The alien general's mockery. The warship hovered over Earth like a silent predator. Its massive, black hull blocked the sun, casting an eerie shadow over the battlefield below. General Celira stood on the command deck, her four arms crossed over her armored chest. Her glowing yellow eyes scanned the planet with amusement. She had conquered dozens of worlds before. This one was no different. Beside her, one of her lieutenants, Commander Vekran, bowed respectfully. "General, the human resistance is preparing for battle." Celira laughed, a deep, mocking sound. "Humans, battle." She shook her head. "I have read their history. Weak creatures. Emotional. They depend on hope and luck instead of strategy and strength." Her officers chuckled. The stories of humans were filled with tales of bravery. But to Celira, they were just that. Stories. Myths that weak species told themselves to feel strong. She turned to the large holographic display in the center of the room. It showed the battlefield below, human soldiers gathering, preparing their weapons, taking defensive positions. They looked so small, so fragile. "They do not even have energy shields," Celira scoffed. "This will be over before it begins." Vekran smirked. "Shall I order the bombardment?" Celira raised a hand to stop him. "No, let them fight. I want to see how long they last." On the battlefield, Captain David Reynolds tightened his grip on his rifle. He could hear the deep hum of the alien warship above, a constant reminder of the overwhelming enemy force. His men stood beside him, their faces tense but determined. "Stay sharp," he said, his voice steady. "They think we're weak. Let's show them otherwise." A soldier next to him, Private Lee, swallowed hard. "Captain, do you really think we have a chance?" David looked at him, then at the rest of his team. "They have better weapons, better technology. But they don't have what we have." Lee frowned. "And what's that?" David gave a small smile. "Heart." Before Lee could respond, the sky lit up. The aliens were descending. Their armored troops landed with heavy thuds, their sleek, glowing weapons aimed at the humans. The battlefield fell silent for a moment. Then, a loud voice echoed across the land. Celira's broadcast. General Celira's voice boomed from the warship's speakers. "Humans, surrender now. You are outmatched. Your weapons are outdated. Your defenses are weak. Your defeat is inevitable." David felt his blood boil, but he forced himself to remain calm. The soldiers around him clenched their fists. Celira continued, her tone dripping with amusement. "I admire your courage, but courage without power is meaningless. This is not your fight to win. Bow before us, and perhaps we will show mercy." Silence. The humans did not move. Celira smirked. "Very well," she said. "Let us begin." She raised her hand, and her soldiers charged. The first strike. The ground trembled as the alien warriors stormed forward. They were larger than humans, their exoskeleton armor making them look even more monstrous. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. David shouted, "Hold the line." The first shot was fired. A human soldier fell, his body disintegrated by an alien blast. Another explosion erupted nearby, sending dirt and smoke into the air. But the humans did not run. Instead, they fought back. Bullets flew, striking weak points in the aliens' armor. Grenades exploded, taking down multiple enemies at once. The battlefield turned into chaos, smoke and fire filling the air. Celira watched from above, her smirk fading slightly. She expected the humans to break, to flee in terror. Instead, they fought harder. She narrowed her eyes. Interesting. A battle unlike any other. As the fight continued, something became clear. The humans were not just fighting with weapons. They were fighting with strategy. They used the terrain, setting traps, forcing the aliens into ambushes. They moved in perfect coordination, covering each other, adapting quickly. Celira's amusement turned to mild irritation. "They are resisting more than expected," she muttered. Vekran shifted uncomfortably. Shall we deploy heavier forces? Salira hesitated. She did not want to admit it, but the humans were not fighting like a weak species. They were fighting like warriors, like something more. She clenched her fists. Let's see how long they last. But deep down, a strange feeling crept into her mind. Doubt. And for the first time in her conquests, General Salira wondered if she had underestimated her enemy. The first clash. The battlefield was shrouded in thick smoke and dust, the scent of burning metal and scorched earth hanging heavy in the air. The alien soldiers, towering, armored brutes with glowing eyes, advanced with mechanical precision. Their weapons, sleek and humming with deadly energy, fired beams of light that cut through human defenses like a knife through paper. But the humans didn't run. Captain David Reynolds crouched behind a crumbling wall, his heart pounding in his chest. Around him, his team was scattered, taking cover wherever they could. The roar of alien machinery filled the air, but over that sound was something unexpected. Silence from his soldiers. No one was panicking. No one was retreating. Hold your ground. David barked into his radio, his voice steady despite the chaos. A beam of alien energy shot past his head, searing the edge of the wall. He ducked instinctively, feeling the heat of it on his skin. But he didn't let fear control him. Fear was the weapon the aliens wanted to use against them. But humans had something else, something the aliens couldn't understand. Salira's growing frustration. High above the battlefield, General Salira watched from the command deck of her warship. Her yellow eyes narrowed as she observed the human soldiers holding their ground. They should have broken by now. Most species did, but not these fragile creatures. They're still fighting, Vekran said, disbelief in his voice, even after losing half their men. Salira's jaw tightened. She had expected resistance, but this was different. The humans fought with a determination that defied logic. Their weapons were primitive, their numbers dwindling, yet they pressed on as if they believed they could win. It's their foolish pride, Salira muttered. Let them cling to it. It will make their defeat even sweeter. But even as she spoke, a sliver of doubt crept into her mind. This wasn't how battles usually went. Human strategy unfolds. Back on the ground, David saw an opportunity. The aliens were strong, yes, but they were predictable. They moved in formation, relying on their superior technology to crush opposition. But that made them vulnerable to something they didn't expect: human ingenuity. Flank left, David ordered, pointing to a narrow alley between two ruined buildings. Lee, Johnson, set up the explosives. Now. Private Lee sprinted across the rubble-strewn ground, ducking behind debris as alien fire rained down around him. Johnson followed close behind, his face grim but focused. They reached the alley and quickly planted the charges, hiding them beneath the debris. Ready. Lee's voice crackled through the radio. David waited, his eyes tracking the alien unit moving toward the trap. Just a little closer. Now. The explosion rocked the battlefield. A brilliant flash of light lit up the sky as the charges detonated, sending alien soldiers flying. Their armored bodies crashed into the ground, lifeless and broken. The humans cheered, but David didn't let them celebrate for long. Regroup, he shouted. We're not done yet. Salira's realization. On the warship, Salira's fists clenched. She had watched the explosion from the command deck, her glowing eyes narrowing in disbelief. The humans had set a trap, an effective one. They're adapting, Vekran said quietly, his earlier arrogance fading. Salira didn't respond. Her mind raced, trying to process what she was seeing. This wasn't normal. No species she had conquered had ever fought like this. Humans were supposed to be weak, fragile creatures driven by emotion. But what she saw was something else entirely. They were calculating, resourceful, dangerous. Deploy the heavy units, Salira finally said, her voice cold. Crush them. The heavy assault. The ground trembled as the alien warship released its next wave of soldiers. These were the elite, massive, heavily armored brutes twice the size of the regular troops. Their weapons glowed with an ominous red light, capable of disintegrating anything in their path. David saw them descending and felt a chill run down his spine. These weren't like the others, but he didn't have time to feel fear. "Fall back to the secondary line," he ordered. "We're not fighting them head-on." The humans moved quickly, retreating to a more defensible position deeper in the ruins. But this wasn't a surrender, it was a tactical move. They knew they couldn't win by brute force. They had to outthink their enemy. As the heavy alien units advanced, the humans set another trap. They lured the aliens into a narrow corridor between two collapsed buildings. The aliens, confident in their superior strength, charged in without hesitation. That's when the humans sprung their surprise. Hidden above the corridor, snipers fired armor-piercing rounds at the weak points in the aliens' exoskeletons. At the same time, grenades rained down from hidden positions, detonating with devastating effect. The corridor became a death trap for the aliens. The first alien retreat. For the first time, the alien forces faltered. The heavy units, though powerful, couldn't withstand the coordinated assault. One by one, they fell, their bodies crashing into the rubble. From the warship, Salira watched in stunned silence. Her elite soldiers, defeated by humans. It was unthinkable. "General," Vikran's voice was hesitant. "Shall we retreat and regroup?" Salira's eyes blazed with fury. "No," she snarled. "We do not retreat from humans." But even as she spoke, she knew something had changed. This was no longer a simple conquest. This was a war. And for the first time in her long, undefeated career, General Salira felt something unfamiliar. Fear. The turning point. The battlefield lay in smoldering ruins. Smoke curled into the sky, darkening the already gray clouds above. The sounds of war, gunfire, explosions, and the distant hum of alien machinery still echoed in the air, but something had changed. There was a pause, a strange, heavy silence that seemed to settle over the land. Captain David Reynolds crouched behind a shattered wall, his rifle resting against his knee. His breath came in ragged bursts, not from fear, but from exhaustion. Around him, his team was battered but alive. They had survived another wave of alien assault, but David knew this wasn't over. He glanced up at the alien warship that loomed above them like a metal predator, its lights flickering ominously against the dark sky. The enemy wasn't retreating. Not yet, but David saw something different in the way the aliens moved now. They weren't charging with the same confidence. They weren't as bold. The humans had done something no other species had. They had made the aliens hesitate. Inside the alien warship, General Salira stood at the center of the command deck, her forearms gripping the edges of the holographic battlefield display. Her glowing yellow eyes stared down at the flickering image of Earth's surface. She had watched the humans fight off her elite soldiers, watched them outthink and outmaneuver forces that should have crushed them with ease. Her mind raced. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Her empire had conquered dozens of planets, and every time, the pattern was the same: initial resistance followed by swift, inevitable defeat. But these humans, they were different. Vikran, her second in command, shifted nervously beside her. "General," he began cautiously, "perhaps we should consider a strategic retreat to analyze their tactics further." Salira's fist slammed into the console, sending a ripple through the holographic display. "No," she barked, her voice echoing through the command deck. "I will not retreat from a primitive species." But even as she spoke, she felt the creeping tendrils of doubt gnawing at the edges of her mind. She had underestimated these humans. Their weapons were primitive, yes, but their minds were something else entirely. The human counterattack begins. Back on the ground, David could feel the shift in momentum. The aliens were still dangerous, deadly, even, but they weren't invincible. And now, the humans knew it. David gathered his team in the ruins of an old building, their faces smeared with dirt and sweat. "They're not as confident as they were," he said, his voice low but firm. "We've got them on their heels. It's time to push back." Private Lee, his face still pale from the last skirmish, frowned. "How? We don't have the firepower to take them head on." David nodded. "We don't need firepower. We've got something better." The team looked at him, waiting. David's eyes glinted with determination. "We've got their tech." Stealing the alien advantage. Earlier in the battle, human forces had managed to capture a piece of alien equipment, a communication device unlike anything they had ever seen. It was sleek, almost organic in design, pulsing with strange energy. David had given it to the engineers, hoping they could find a way to use it against the invaders. Now, the engineers returned with a grim smile. "We cracked it," one of them said, holding up a modified version of the device. "It's not perfect, but we've tapped into their network. We can hear their communications. We know where they're moving next." David's heart pounded. This was the break they needed. The aliens had the advantage of superior technology. But now, the humans had turned that advantage on its head. "Let's give them a surprise," David said, a grin spreading across his face. "The trap is set." Using the stolen alien communication device, the humans listened in on the aliens' next move. The enemy was planning another large-scale assault, confident that sheer numbers would overwhelm the remaining human forces. But David had other plans. He positioned his soldiers in key locations, setting traps along the aliens' expected path. Hidden explosives were buried beneath the rubble, snipers took positions in the shadows, and choke points were rigged to collapse at the right moment. As the alien forces advanced, the humans waited. Every second felt like an eternity, the tension thick in the air, but David remained calm. He knew this was their chance to turn the tide. The ambush unfolds. The aliens moved into the trap exactly as predicted. Their heavy boots crunched over the rubble, their weapons scanning for threats. But they didn't see the humans hiding in the shadows. They didn't realize the ground beneath their feet was laced with explosives. David waited until the last possible moment, then gave the signal. The battlefield erupted in chaos. Explosions ripped through the alien ranks, sending armored bodies flying. Snipers fired precise shots, targeting the weak points in the aliens' armor. The aliens scrambled to respond, but the humans were everywhere, striking from every direction. For the first time, the alien forces broke formation. They retreated. Salira's rage. On the warship, Salira watched the ambush unfold with growing fury. Her forces were in disarray, her carefully planned assault falling apart before her eyes. "How are they doing this?" she hissed, her claws digging into the console. Vekran swallowed hard. "They've adapted, General. They're using our technology against us." Salira's eyes blazed with anger. "Then we'll take it back. Prepare the obliterator cannon. We'll wipe them out in one strike." But deep down, even as she gave the order, Salira knew something had shifted. This wasn't just a battle anymore. It was a war of wills. And for the first time, she wasn't sure if she could win. The turning point. As the alien forces retreated, David stood amidst the rubble, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion. Around him, his soldiers cheered, but David didn't relax. He knew this wasn't over. The aliens would be back, stronger and more dangerous than before. But now, the humans had something they didn't have before. Hope. And that hope was more powerful than any weapon the aliens could bring. The hidden power. The smoke from the last battle still lingered in the air, curling through the shattered remains of what used to be a bustling city. Buildings stood like skeletons, their windows shattered, their walls scorched. The ground was littered with debris, twisted metal, broken weapons, and the bodies of both human and alien soldiers. But amidst the destruction, something unexpected stirred. Hope. Captain David Reynolds stood at the edge of the ruined city, staring at the distant silhouette of the alien warship that hovered like a vulture over the horizon. His body ached from days of fighting, but his mind was sharp, focused. They had survived longer than anyone thought possible. They had made the aliens bleed. But David knew this was just the beginning. Inside the warship, Celira's frustration boils over. General Celira paced across the warship's command deck, her claws clicking against the metallic floor. The glowing hologram of Earth flickered in front of her, showing the battle zones where her forces had been pushed back, by humans, no less. Her 4 eyes burned with rage and disbelief. "How?" she growled, turning to her lieutenant, Vekren. "How are they still standing?" Vekren shifted uncomfortably, his usually confident posture now hesitant. "They are adaptable, General. They've used our technology against us. They think differently." Celira's lips curled into a snarl. "They are weak, flesh and bone against our armor and energy weapons. They should be crushed." Vekren hesitated before speaking. "General, perhaps it's not their strength we've underestimated. It's their will." Celira froze. The words echoed in her mind, and for the first time, she felt something unfamiliar creeping into her chest. Fear, but she quickly buried it under a layer of cold fury. "Prepare the obliterator cannon," she ordered. "We'll end this in one strike." The countdown to annihilation. Back on the ground, David and his team received intel from their hacked alien communication device. The message was clear. The aliens were preparing a weapon powerful enough to destroy entire cities in a single shot. "We need to move," David said, his voice steady but urgent. "If they fire that thing, we're done." Private Lee frowned. "But how do we stop something like that? We don't even know where it is." David looked at the alien warship on the horizon, its lights glowing ominously. "We're going up there." The team fell silent. The idea was insane. Suicidal, even. But no one argued. They all knew the stakes. If they didn't act now, humanity wouldn't get another chance. The secret weapon, humanity's spirit. As the humans prepared for their daring assault on the alien warship, David gathered his team in the ruins of an old bunker. He looked at each of them, exhausted, bruised, but unbroken. "They think we're weak," David said, his voice carrying through the quiet. "They think they can break us with fear, but they don't understand what it means to be human. They don't understand what it means to fight for something more than survival." Private Johnson nodded, his eyes hard. "They don't know what it means to fight for home." David smiled. "Exactly. We don't fight because we have better weapons. We fight because we have something worth protecting. Our families, our friends, our future." There was a spark in their eyes now, a fire that no alien technology could extinguish. This was humanity's hidden power, their spirit. The infiltration begins. Under the cover of darkness, David and his team moved toward the alien warship. Using the stolen alien tech, they managed to disable a small section of the ship's defenses. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The team slipped aboard through a maintenance hatch, their hearts pounding in their chests. The interior of the ship was cold and sterile, the walls pulsing with an eerie organic glow. Strange symbols lined the corridors, and the distant hum of alien machinery echoed through the halls. "Stick together," David whispered. "We get to that cannon, and we shut it down, whatever it takes." They moved silently through the ship, avoiding patrols and disabling security systems as they went. But as they got closer to the core, the resistance grew stronger. Alien soldiers, larger and more heavily armed than any they had faced before, began to appear. But the humans didn't back down. They fought with everything they had, using guerrilla tactics and their knowledge of the ship's layout to outmaneuver the enemy. The heart of the beast. Finally, they reached the chamber where the obliterator cannon was housed. The weapon was massive, its energy core glowing with a blinding blue light. It was unlike anything the humans had ever seen, a weapon capable of wiping out entire continents with a single shot. But between them and the cannon stood General Celira. She was even more terrifying up close. taller than any human, with 4 arms, each holding a different weapon. Her eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and her mouth twisted into a cruel smile. "So," she hissed, "the little insects have crawled into the lion's den." David stepped forward, his rifle raised. "We're not insects, and this isn't your den." Zalira laughed, a harsh, metallic sound. "You think you can stop me? You're nothing but fragile creatures, clinging to hope like it's a shield." David's eyes hardened. "Hope is our shield, and it's stronger than you'll ever understand." The final stand. The room erupted into chaos as Zalira charged, her weapons blazing. The humans scattered, using the environment to their advantage. They were outgunned and outmatched, but they fought with a determination that Zalira couldn't comprehend. David dodged a blast of energy, rolling behind a console. He fired back, his shots hitting the weak points in Zalira's armor. But she was fast, too fast. Private Lee took a hit, falling to the ground with a cry of pain. But even as he bled, he crawled toward the cannon, planting explosives along its base. "Cover him," David shouted, unloading his rifle at Zalira. The battle was fierce, but the humans never faltered. One by one, they made their sacrifices, buying time for Lee to finish the job. Finally, with his last ounce of strength, Lee activated the detonator. The cannon exploded in a brilliant flash of light, the shockwave ripping through the chamber. Zalira screamed, thrown back by the force of the blast. When the dust settled, the humans were battered and bloodied, but alive. Zalira's defeat. Zalira lay on the ground, her body broken, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had faced countless enemies, conquered entire civilizations, but she had never encountered anything like this. You shouldn't have been able to," she gasped, struggling to speak. David stood over her, his face hard but calm. "You don't understand, do you? It's not about weapons or strength. It's about will." Zalira's eyes flickered, the light in them fading. "You are dangerous." David nodded. "And we're just getting started." The battle intensifies. The obliterator cannon was gone. What should have been Earth's final hour had instead become the moment that shifted everything. But even in the heart of victory, Captain David Reynolds knew the war was far from over. The alien warship, though wounded, still hovered menacingly in the sky, like a predator circling its prey. Fires burned in the distance where alien forces had regrouped, and the faint hum of their weapons echoed across the ruined cityscape. David stood among the rubble, breathing heavily, his body battered from the mission aboard the alien ship. Around him, the surviving members of his team gathered, their faces covered in dirt, blood, and determination. They had struck a blow the aliens never expected. But now, the full wrath of the enemy was about to be unleashed. Zalira's fury unleashed. High above Earth, General Zalira sat in the darkened command chamber of her warship, staring at the ruins of her once mighty weapon. Her exoskeletal armor was cracked from the explosion, and one of her arms hung uselessly at her side. But it wasn't the physical pain that consumed her, it was rage. "How dare they?" she hissed, her voice a venomous whisper that echoed through the silent room. Her officers stood at attention, but none dared speak. The failure of the obliterator cannon was a humiliation unlike any in Zalira's long, undefeated career. "They are nothing," she growled, her eyes glowing with fury. "Nothing. And yet they have wounded me." Her second-in-command, Vekran, approached cautiously, his eyes flickering with both fear and admiration. "General, their resistance is unlike anything we've seen. Perhaps we should." Silence. Zalira roared, slamming her remaining fist into the console. The holographic map of Earth flickered, but Zalira didn't care. "We do not retreat. We do not negotiate. We will crush them." But even as the words left her mouth, a seed of doubt took root in her mind. This enemy was unlike any she had faced before. They fought not just with weapons, but with something far more dangerous, unyielding spirit. the humans' last line of defense. Back on the ground, David and his team prepared for the inevitable counterattack. The obliterator cannon's destruction had bought them time, but they all knew the aliens wouldn't stop until humanity was either enslaved or wiped out. They gathered in what remained of the city's underground bunkers, using the alien technology they'd salvaged to reinforce their defenses. Engineers worked tirelessly to modify alien weapons, turning them into tools that could be used by human hands. But David knew that technology alone wouldn't save them. It was their unity, their refusal to give up, that had kept them alive this long. "Listen up," David said, standing in front of the weary but determined soldiers. "They're coming back, and they're going to hit us harder than ever. But they've made one mistake." Private Lee, his arm in a sling from the last battle, looked up. "What's that, sir?" David's eyes hardened. "They think we're afraid." A ripple of determination spread through the room. The soldiers exchanged glances, their fear giving way to something stronger: defiance. "They've seen our weapons," David continued, "but they haven't seen what we're really capable of. They don't understand what it means to fight for your home, your family, your future." The soldiers nodded, their faces set with grim determination. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and exhausted, but they were ready. The aliens' final assault. The sky turned an unnatural shade of green as the alien warship descended, its massive engines sending tremors through the ground. From the ship's belly, drop pods rained down like meteors, slamming into the earth with deafening booms. The ground forces that emerged were unlike any the humans had faced before. These were Xelira's most elite soldiers, taller, stronger, and armed with weapons that glowed with a sinister light. Their armor was nearly impenetrable, and their faces showed no emotion, only the cold efficiency of killing machines. But the humans were ready. As the alien forces advanced, David gave the order. "Now." Explosions erupted across the battlefield as hidden mines detonated, sending shards of metal and fire into the advancing aliens. Snipers perched in the ruins picked off enemy soldiers, aiming for the small, vulnerable joints in their armor. The modified alien weapons roared to life, cutting through the ranks of the enemy with newfound power. The battlefield became a chaotic maelstrom of fire and blood. The aliens pressed forward relentlessly, their superior technology giving them an edge. But the humans fought with a ferocity that defied all logic. A battle of wills. In the heart of the battle, David moved like a force of nature, his rifle blazing as he led his team through the chaos. Bullets and energy blasts flew past him, but he didn't flinch. Around him, his soldiers fought with everything they had, their battle cries echoing through the ruins. Private Lee, despite his injuries, managed to take down an alien soldier twice his size, using nothing but a modified alien blade and sheer determination. Johnson, with a bloodied face and a broken arm, refused to fall back, holding the line against impossible odds. But the aliens were relentless. They kept coming, their numbers seemingly endless. For every alien that fell, two more took its place. David felt the weight of the battle pressing down on him. They were losing ground, inch by inch. But then, something remarkable happened. As he looked around, he saw civilians, unarmed men, women, and even children, emerging from the bunkers. They carried whatever they could find: makeshift weapons, metal pipes, even rocks. They stood beside the soldiers, ready to fight. The sight filled David with a surge of hope. The aliens had underestimated humanity's greatest strength, their refusal to surrender. Xelira descends. From the sky, a massive drop pod slammed into the ground, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The pod hissed open, and from the smoke emerged General Xelira herself, her armor gleaming, her eyes burning with fury. She strode through the battlefield like a living nightmare, cutting down anyone in her path with ruthless efficiency. Her weapons fired beams of searing light, disintegrating anything they touched. David saw her and felt a chill run down his spine, but he didn't back down. "This ends now," he muttered, gripping his rifle tightly. Salira's gaze locked onto him, and a cruel smile spread across her face. "You again," she hissed. "I should have crushed you when I had the chance." David didn't respond with words. Instead, he charged. The clash of leaders. The battlefield seemed to fade away as David and Salira clashed. Her strength was overwhelming, her speed inhuman. But David fought with something she couldn't understand. Heart. Every time Salira struck, David found a way to dodge, parry, or counter. He wasn't as strong, but he was clever. He used the environment, turning rubble and debris into weapons. The fight raged on, both leaders refusing to give an inch. Salira's confidence began to waver as she realized something terrifying. She couldn't break him. "You're just a man," she snarled, her movements growing desperate. "How are you still standing?" David, bloodied and bruised, met her gaze with fierce determination. "Because I'm fighting for more than myself. And that's something you'll never understand." The turning tide. With a final, desperate move, David managed to knock Salira off balance. Using a stolen alien blade, he drove it into the weak point of her armor. Salira screamed, her body convulsing as the blade pierced through her. The alien forces, seeing their leader fall, faltered. For the first time, they retreated. The battlefield fell silent. The humans, battered and broken, had won. A new dawn. As the sun began to rise over the ruined city, David stood amidst the wreckage, his heart heavy but hopeful. They had faced impossible odds, but they had endured. And in their endurance, they had shown the universe something powerful. Humanity would never be conquered. The final stand. The sun rose over a battered earth, its golden rays struggling to pierce through the dense clouds of smoke and ash that clung to the sky. Cities lay in ruins, landscapes scarred by alien weaponry, but amid the devastation, a fragile hope flickered like an ember refusing to die out. Captain David Reynolds stood on what used to be the roof of a government building, now just a skeletal frame overlooking the battlefield. His body ached with every breath, wounds both fresh and old screaming in protest. But his eyes, bloodshot and weary, were sharp, locked on the horizon where the alien warship still hovered. They had driven the aliens back. They had made them bleed. But David knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the final battle. A new threat emerges. Deep within the alien warship, General Salira lay in a regenerative chamber, her broken body slowly healing. The human's blade had pierced her armor, but it had done more than just physical damage. It had shattered her invincible image. For the first time in her life, she had been defeated. But defeat did not breed surrender in Salira. As the healing fluids coursed through her veins, Salira's mind burned with rage and something even more dangerous: desperation. She had underestimated these humans once, and it had cost her dearly. She wouldn't make that mistake again. She summoned her top scientists and engineers to the chamber. Her voice, though weakened, was filled with venom. "Initiate the final protocol." Vekran, her loyal second-in-command, hesitated. His usually confident demeanor cracked. "General, the final protocol has never been tested. It could destroy." "I don't care." Salira roared, her voice echoing through the chamber. "If we can't conquer this planet, we will erase it from existence." The final protocol wasn't just a weapon. It was a planet killer, designed to destabilize a planet's core and reduce it to cosmic dust. It was a last resort, one Salira had sworn never to use. But now, her pride demanded nothing less. The last hope. Back on Earth, David and his team intercepted the alien communication using the stolen tech they'd risked their lives to obtain. As the message played out, a cold silence fell over the bunker. Private Lee's face went pale. "They're going to destroy the entire planet." David clenched his fists. He felt the weight of every life on Earth pressing down on him. Civilians, families, children. They were all counting on them. But how do you fight a weapon that can kill a planet? "They're not giving us a choice," David said quietly. "We have to stop that weapon." no matter what it takes. The team gathered around, battered but resolute. They knew the mission ahead was a suicide run. The warship was damaged, but still heavily guarded, and the final protocol was already counting down. But giving up wasn't an option. Not for them. Not for humanity. The final assault. Using the last of their resources, David's team coordinated with resistance groups across the globe. Fighters from every corner of Earth, soldiers, civilians, even former enemies, came together for one last, desperate assault. The plan was simple: infiltrate the alien warship, find the final protocol device, and destroy it before it could activate. As they moved through the ruined city toward the alien warship, David felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. But he wasn't alone. His team moved with him, each step echoing their shared determination. Private Johnson, his face scared but eyes burning with fire, clapped David on the back. "Let's show them what humans are really made of." David nodded. "Let's end this." Inside the beast, they breached the alien warship through a weak point in the hull, created by the earlier battles. The corridors inside were dimly lit, pulsing with an eerie organic glow. The air was thick with tension and the distant hum of alien machinery. But something was different. The ship wasn't just a war machine anymore. It felt alive. As they pushed deeper, they encountered strange, mutated alien soldiers, fused with their own technology, their bodies grotesque and twisted. These were no longer soldiers. They were monsters, desperate creations of Celera's madness. The team fought their way through, each battle more brutal than the last. But the humans had something the aliens didn't: purpose. Every bullet, every strike, was fueled by the knowledge that they were fighting for everything they loved. Finally, they reached the core, a massive, pulsating chamber where the final protocol device sat, its countdown ticking ominously. The final confrontation. And there, standing between them and the device, was General Celera. Her body was partially healed, but she was no longer the proud, confident leader they had faced before. She was something else entirely, a creature driven by pure rage and desperation. "You think you can stop me?" she hissed, her voice a mix of fury and madness. "I will erase your planet, your people, your history. You will be nothing." David stepped forward, his rifle raised, but his voice calm. "You've already lost, Celera. We're still here, and we're not going anywhere." Celera let out a roar and charge, her mutated arms swinging with deadly force. The final battle began. The sacrifice. The fight was brutal. Celera's strength was monstrous, but David and his team fought with everything they had. One by one, his teammates fell, each sacrifice buying precious seconds to stop the countdown. Private Lee, bleeding and barely standing, managed to reach the control panel, but it was locked behind alien encryption. There wasn't enough time to hack it. "There's only one way to stop it," Lee gasped, looking at David with a grim smile. "We overload the core." David's heart clenched. Overloading the core would stop the final protocol, but it would also destroy the entire warship, and everyone on it. Lee placed a trembling hand on David's shoulder. "Go. Get out of here. I'll do it." David hesitated, but Lee's eyes were firm. "You've got to live, Captain. Tell them. Tell them we didn't give up." With a heavy heart, David nodded and pulled back, dragging the remaining survivors with him. As they escaped through the warship's collapsing corridors, David looked back one last time. Lee stood by the core, his hand on the detonator, his face calm. And then the world exploded in light. The aftermath. The alien warship shattered in the sky, a brilliant explosion that lit up the heavens. The shockwave rolled across the Earth, but the planet remained intact. The final protocol had been stopped. David awoke in the rubble, his body bruised and battered but alive. Around him, the survivors of humanity began to emerge from the wreckage, their faces marked by loss, but also by something powerful: hope. They had lost friends, family, and entire cities, but they had won. As David stood, looking at the rising sun over the ruined world, he felt a deep, unshakable certainty. Humanity had faced extinction and stared it down. And in doing so, they had proven something to the universe. You can break our bodies, but you will never break our spirit. The aftermath. The alien warship burned as it fell from the sky, a wounded giant crashing into the Earth's atmosphere in a final brilliant blaze. It split apart in midair, pieces scattering like shooting stars across the horizon, lighting up the dawn with a strange, otherworldly glow. For a moment, the entire world seemed to hold its breath, watching as the last symbol of alien domination crumbled into nothing. Captain David Reynolds lay in the rubble, his body bruised and broken, but alive. The ground beneath him trembled with the final shockwaves of the explosion, but his heart beat steady in his chest. Above him, the sky was slowly clearing, the thick clouds of smoke and ash parting to reveal the soft, golden light of a new day. They had done it. The war was over. The price of victory. David struggled to his feet, his body protesting with every movement. Around him, the ruins of the battlefield stretched as far as the eye could see. What was once a thriving city was now a graveyard of twisted metal, scorched earth, and fallen comrades. The air was thick with the acrid smell of smoke and the faint metallic scent of blood. He looked around for survivors, his heart sinking with each passing second of silence. But then, through the haze, he saw movement. A figure emerged from the dust. Private Johnson, his face streaked with dirt and blood, but alive. Behind him, more soldiers appeared, some limping, others helping their wounded comrades. They were battered, broken, but unbowed. David felt a surge of relief, but it was tempered by the weight of loss. So many had fallen. He thought of Private Lee, who had stayed behind to overload the alien warship's core. Lee's face flashed in David's mind, his final words echoing in his ears. "Tell them we didn't give up." David clenched his fists, the grief settling in his chest like a stone. They had won, but the cost had been unimaginable. A world reborn. Days passed, and the survivors began to rebuild. The alien threat was gone, but the scars of the war were everywhere, on the land, in the people, and deep within their hearts. Cities that had been reduced to rubble slowly came back to life as communities banded together, driven by a shared determination to reclaim their world. David found himself walking through the ruins of his hometown, the streets he once knew now unrecognizable. But amid the destruction, there were signs of hope. Children played in the streets, their laughter a sharp contrast to the silence that had followed the battles. Families rebuilt their homes, neighbors shared resources, and people found strength in each other. The world had changed. Humanity had changed. They were no longer the same species that had once looked to the stars with fear. They had faced the abyss and emerged stronger, united by the shared memory of their struggle and the knowledge that they had overcome the impossible. The galactic response. Far beyond Earth, in the cold depths of space, the destruction of General Celera's warship sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Celera had been one of the most feared military leaders in the known universe, her conquests stretching across countless worlds. Her defeat at the hands of a primitive species like humans was unthinkable. In the great halls of the Galactic Council, leaders of advanced civilizations gathered to discuss the implications. Some were in disbelief, others in awe. But all agreed on one thing: the humans were not to be underestimated. They defeated Celera's entire fleet, one alien diplomat whispered, his voice tinged with fear. With inferior technology. They fought with something far more dangerous than weapons, another replied grimly. They fought with will. The galaxy had learned a new name, one that would echo through history: humanity. The monument. Months later, in the heart of the rebuilt city, a monument was erected. It was simple, a tall black obelisk carved from the remains of the alien warship, standing as a symbol of humanity's resilience. At its base were the names of those who had fallen, etched into the stone so they would never be forgotten. David stood before the monument, his reflection staring back at him from the polished surface. He traced the names with his fingers, pausing when he reached Lee's. "You didn't give up," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Behind him, people gathered. Soldiers, civilians, children who had grown up hearing stories of the war. They looked at the monument with a mixture of sorrow and pride. It wasn't just a reminder of what they had lost, but of what they had become. David turned to face the crowd, his voice steady despite the emotions churning inside him. "We fought for our survival," he said, his words carrying across the silent gathering. "But more than that, we fought for each other. For our families, our homes, and our future. They tried to break us, but we showed them the truth." He paused, his eyes scanning the faces in the crowd. Humanity isn't just about strength or technology. It's about heart. It's about standing together when everything falls apart. And that's something no enemy can ever take from us. The crowd erupted in applause, but David felt something deeper than pride. It was the unshakable knowledge that they had not only survived, but had proven to the universe that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. A new dawn. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the monument, David walked away from the square, his heart lighter than it had been in months. The war had left scars, on the world, on his body, and on his soul, but it had also revealed something extraordinary. Humans were more than survivors. They were warriors. And as they looked to the stars, they no longer saw a vast, frightening unknown. They saw a future filled with possibilities, knowing that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Because humanity had learned its greatest lesson. You can break our bodies, but you will never break our spirit.